Hey there, everybody. It's Cameron Morrissey coming to you again live from sunny and beautiful Las Vegas for another live Q&A session on leadership and management. For those first timers out there, welcome. It's great to have you here. I hope this session is really fantastic for you and gives you some great answers and some great resources. We do these a couple times a week just so that I can interact with you. That's part of the reason I do these things, is because it's just so much fun to talk to other leaders out there and kind of work through those struggles. But I want it to be a resource for everybody out there as well. I want you guys through the course of the week to be able to ask questions with struggles that you're having in the real world out there that you're dealing with this week, today, that you can, so we can get together and hopefully solve some of those issues so you can keep moving forward. Again, I love it when people chime in and give their thoughts on things in the comments section. I don't pretend to have all of the answers out there, but I know together all of us have some pretty decent answers for most of these struggles. So as we get some people coming on board here, Debbie, Luann, good to see you guys here. As we get some people on here, go ahead, drop down into the comment section. Let me know where you're tuning in from. It's always nice to know that these leadership struggles that we're having are not unique. You'll see a lot of questions coming in from all over the world that really resonate with you. And part of the reason is because leadership is about dealing with people. And dealing with people, presents its own set of struggles that are kind of universal. So as you come on board, let me know where you're tuning in from, and I'll look for my first question today. John, good to see you here. Go Hawks. Ready for the season to start. And Ariana and Renee, good to see you here as well. Question that I didn't get a chance to get to in yesterday's live session was in regards to a brand new leader. So she was promoted in January, but she was promoted from the ranks of her team members, and she's having trouble with the respect and the disrespect that her fellow employees are now demonstrating to her now that she's in that leadership role. Maybe there's a little bit of jealousy going on. Maybe they don't think that she has what it takes. And so my big recommendation for everybody when you start out in a leadership role, and this goes for if you are starting with a new company as well or a new organization, when you come on board, the important thing is to really focus on communicating with the team and communicating why you are making the decisions that you are making. The employees that we oversee have very little idea of what we do on a day in, day out basis. We may think they do, but they really don't. And so when you focus on communicating the why behind your decisions, what you're doing is you're letting them know what your thought process is, what your logic is, that you have a thought process and a logic behind your decisions. And when you do that, they gain respect for you based on the logic that you have. And they also gain that understanding of why it is that you do what you do and why things are important. So my big encouragement when you come on board in a new leadership position, whether you're promoted through the ranks or whether you're coming into a new organization, is talk about the why behind what you're doing. And that way you are able to get information from them. It opens up a discourse, but you also let them know that there is a thought process behind what it is that you're thinking or you're doing out there. First question comes in. I'll scroll up through, but I'll handle this while I'm doing it. And that is from Ashraf, and that's, what is the best way to keep your team members motivated? Ashraf, what I always recommend in regards to motivation is to focus first and foremost on the success. We as leaders are really focused on looking for problems. We want to find where the problem is so that we can fix it. And what that does is the dialogue in the organization becomes all about problems, and it isn't about your successes. And I guarantee that every organization that is out there has a ton of successes. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in existence right now. So one of the first things that you want to do from a motivation standpoint for your team is start catching them doing things right. Don't try to catch them doing things wrong. Of course, you still need to do that to a certain extent, but you want to catch them doing things right. You want to recognize their successes when they've had, learning, when they've had a great phone call or a great customer interaction, when they've done a report well. You want to recognize those things. And then you also want to recognize it in the organization itself. It's important that they understand that the organization is doing well and that there is a camaraderie and a teamwork around organizational successes as well. There are successes all over in your department every single day. You just have to be looking for them. And if you give them that little pat on the back and that little bit of recognition, that's the first thing in really upping that motivation for them and really turning around the morale in a department. It's not as difficult as we make it out to be. It's often very simple, and it just is about calling out those successes that are out there. Sushant asked the question, how do you become a leader first? Leadership is all about working through people. That's one of the big struggles that leaders have is a lot of us were promoted and a lot of us are recognized for our individual achievements, the report that we did, how we handled a particular thing. But really, leadership is about working through your team. You are there to support them. And so one of the most important questions a leader should ask their team member, each and every one of them, is, how can I help you do a better job? What do you need from me to do your job better? And then you take action on that. That is somebody who is a leader. Now, yes, you need to have the vision, you need to have the goals, you need to have, the direction that everybody's going. Those are kind of the obvious things that most people have. But to be a real leader, you need to be focused on your team, and you need to be focused on giving them what they need to be as successful as possible, because when you are all successful, then the leader is successful and the leader produces the results as well. Lizette asked the question, what are good strategies for local store marketing for your restaurant? It's all word of mouth. Word of mouth is the most important thing. When you talk about a restaurant or you talk about any other business, and that's why if you are in the a customer-facing department or organization, it is all about that individual customer interaction that you're dealing with at that moment. That has a cumulative effect. Your ability in leadership to demonstrate that to your team so that they are giving their all and they are making every experience important to the customer or engaging for the customer is vital. I spent over a decade in hospitality, and that was really the key for so many of those. I'm in Las Vegas, so we're talking about 3,000 room hotels, but it really comes down to the individual customer interaction. 99% of customers you as a leader are not going to interact with, but that 1% you can make a difference on because they will tell their friends. The key for all of that marketing is word of mouth, whether it is Yelp reviews, whether it is social media. All of those things have come about and have been built up and are successful based on that simple principle. So focus on the customer that's in front of you, make their experience fantastic, and then the marketing will take care of itself largely. Next question comes in. How do you handle a manager who is not guiding properly? Nariana asked this question. And we're going to find disagreements with our leaders on a regular basis. The first thing that you want to do is you want to find out why they are making the decision that they are making. You may feel like they are not guiding properly, but you may not understand all of the impetuses or all the inputs that go into that decision. Your leader has a higher viewpoint, for lack of a better term on it. They have more access to information, and so they are going to make decisions based on that, and you may not see that. So the first thing that you want to do is ask them why they made the decision. And you may find that they made the correct decision. Now, in the case where you disagree with that, that then opens up the dialogue with the boss so that you can ask them, well, had you considered doing this instead? And so that's where you can make your suggestion at that point. But ask them very neutrally, very positively, why is it that you made that decision? And then that'll kind of guide that discussion down the road. Now, if you find that they're continually making those decisions and you're having those discussions and they aren't making the right decisions, what you can often do is you can take leadership. Leaders are in every part of the organization. Front desk people at hotels and sales clerks in department stores. All of them can be in leadership positions and can make those decisions. So you may have opportunities, and you want to be careful with these. You don't want to overstep your bounds, but you may have opportunities to put in place the decision that you'd like to see done. And then you can go ahead and bring that back to your boss as an example of how your thinking was correct on a certain matter and how it should be brought out to the whole organization. But start with those first questions. John recommends a good book, and I'm a big fan of it as well, and that's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. And to get to the first dysfunction, and that is trust. That is the absolute foundation for all of the rest of the dysfunctions that happen in organizations, is a lack of trust. And the way you tackle trust is through communication. That's the simple way of tackling trust. If you want the other 4 dysfunctions, then you're going to have to look it up on Amazon.com. Balchandra asked the question: how do you handle older employees working underneath you? So you're a younger employee, they're older, they have more experience. What older employees or employees that just simply have more experience, you could be the same age and they could have 10 more years of experience in the organization. What they want is they want you to recognize their experience. They want you to recognize their value. That's all they want. And so all you need to do is you need to just ask them questions about it. So if you have a particular issue, ask them what they think of it, what they think that you should do on a particular situation. You may find that they want to do exactly what it is that you thought you should do all along. Now, in cases where there is a difference, this then opens up that communication. So they say, I think you should do A, and you say, well, I'm thinking about doing B, and I'm thinking about doing B because of this. Again, you are getting into the why behind your decision. Now, what happens with that is valued their experience enough to get their input on something, and then you have explained why you've taken a different route. A lot of the problems with more experienced employees is they get bitter because you are not respecting them, and you're making decisions that they don't agree with and don't understand why you're making. So bring them into the discussion. It doesn't take much to ask their opinion on something and then explain why you want to do something else or agree with what they want to do and move forward. Over time, that'll build that respect and it'll be easier to work with those more experienced employees. Renee puts up the exact point that I was making on there is no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's exactly it. You have to show that caring to everybody else on your team, and that'll help ease so much of what you want to get done in your directives and your expectations for them, etc. Magda asked the question, how to work on increasing team capabilities. And Magda, I love it. It's a very practical and constructive question. The way to do that is actually to not take them necessarily as an entire team. The best way to deal with those capabilities, the best way, and you may not have time or the capabilities to do this, but the best way is to actually work on individual performance plans. So you want to get with each of the team members and ask them, what are your goals for your career? What do you like doing? What do you wish you could learn? Ask them those questions, and from those answers, you'll be able to develop the plan of what they want to work on. The goal is to increase their capabilities and their skill sets so that the entire team is more valuable, but that doesn't mean that everybody needs to go to an Excel class or everybody needs to get a certain reporting experience. It may be that some people want to be more customer facing or want to be more out front. Some people want to be more back behind the scenes and do reporting. But find out individually what everybody wants to do, and then you can come up with a plan on an individual basis for doing that. Now, what that plan looks like could be all kinds of different things. There's all kinds of things that are available to you. It could be shadowing. You can shadow another department, have the person look over somebody else's shoulder, shadow within the department. That's another way to do it. The other thing that I do recommend, even if they don't express an interest in leadership, is giving them some leadership exposure. That can be them being the point on a particular project, on a particular report that's going on. So definitely work on the leadership aspect of things, because a lot of people don't recognize that they have leadership traits or that they might be great at leadership. They might be very content where they're at, but with a little bit of exposure to an area, they might find that it's something that's of interest for them. So find out what the people want to do, but also work some structure in there as well to expose them to different things that they may not have recognized they had a talent for. That would be my advice on that. Jackie asked the question, what are a few books you recommend for a new manager, or what are a few good seminars? And Jackie, the books I recommend fall into what I call the old category. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey is my favorite. I did a survey of all of the people of my audience on social media, 1 million people, and that was the #1 business book that they recommended, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The other thing that I recommend is Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. Both of these books are decades old, but they get at the key fundamentals of dealing with people and dealing with yourself in a constructive way. If you tackle both of those, you've gotten a whole lot out of it. And those were, I think, #1 and #3, if I'm not mistaken, on that poll that I did. But that's a couple to start out with. And then you can just kind of see where you go from there. You can go to the Amazon.com and just check in the top 20 business books and take a look at what's selling right now and what's out there, and kind of filter out what meets your individual needs with that. But those are 2 that I always recommend for people. Next question is, 5 dysfunction. John throws that one out there. Shushant asked the question, how to have a successful startup. That's not necessarily my expertise, is startups. The one thing I will say is pay attention to cash flow and what the money is coming in. Paying attention to lifetime value of your customers is great. However, it doesn't necessarily pay the bills next month. So keep an eye on cash flow. Renee asked the question, I want to mentor associates from my team. What books do you suggest that I might be able to use to help with that? Well, I've mentioned a couple that give you a couple of great pieces of advice. That 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and How to Win Friends and Influence People is all about dealing with other people and getting your point across to them and finding out how it is that you can get your point across best, have them listen to you, how you can gather information, and then really what to do with that information. So again, I'd throw out those 2 books. If you haven't checked those out, Renee, definitely check those 2 out, because you'll find a number of insights there that you can impart on anybody who's looking to start out in their leadership career. Nariana asked the question, what are key points to follow to become a leader? You work through your team and you communicate as much as possible. John Maxwell, another author in leadership, has a saying that says everything rises and falls on leadership. And I follow that up with a saying that leadership rises and falls on communication. So if you want to become a leader, really focus on communicating with other people and being a resource to your team. If you want to know who the leader is in a particular department, look to see who everybody goes to when they have a question or when there's a crisis. You'll be surprised how many times it isn't the supervisor or manager in the department, but it's somebody at the line level. That would be my recommendation there. Jareva asked the question, what should a boss do when his employee not following the rules or instructions? How a boss can avoid getting angry because of these? What you want to do to tackle your anger is focus it on something constructive. Focus on a constructive next step as much as possible. You don't want to dwell on the emotional side, and the way to tackle that emotion is with logic. So what you want to do in this particular case is, if somebody is not following the rules, you need to first ask, did I clearly state what the rules are? So many times in leadership, we expect certain things, but we've never actually told everybody what it is that we expect them to do. So you need to make sure that you're clear on expectations. The other thing is to pull the person in and ask them about the situation. You may not have all of the details behind it. They may have broke the rules, but they may have had the right intent behind the breaking of the rules. So get more information behind it and then have that discussion, get clear on those expectations. And then in the cases where they continually break those expectations that they've been clear on, that's why progressive discipline policies are in place, is so that you can let them know that you're serious and that there's consequences if they don't follow those expectations. But tackle the emotion with logic as much as possible and get that next logical step that you can take. So instead of having that angry outburst, you direct that into something constructive instead. Next question is, Sharon asks, how do I re-engage a leader of people that isn't interested in just going through the motions until retirement? The way to re-engage people is with a challenge, most likely. That's how I recommend re-engaging employees as much as possible, is some sort of challenge. And it may be in the case of somebody who's, 1 foot out the door on the way to retirement, that's not something that's going to be able to happen. And in those cases where there is a leadership vacuum, you go ahead and step in those cases. What you do is you be a resource for your team, you answer their questions, and you keep the boss in the loop as to what your decisions are and why you made those particular decisions, Sharon. That's really the key on it, and not overstepping bounds. So the leader is most likely going to be thrilled with the fact that you've stepped up and basically taken over part of their job for them so that they can continue to chill out and wait for retirement. And you get valuable experience from that, and the operation continues to move forward. I always recommend those leadership vacuums are opportunities for you as much as possible. So if they won't step up to a challenge, that's the easiest way to re-engage with them. You know why they are disengaged. That would be the other reason if you have a disengaged employee, is trying to find out why. Have a conversation with them. It might be stumbling at home. It might be that they want to learn something. They're stuck in a rut, that sort of thing. But in those cases of retirement, you kind of know what that is. So if they won't step up, then you go ahead and step up and make that an opportunity for you. Alan asked the question from Vancouver. Good to see you here. When there is an obvious sign that a change is needed for the organization, but the leaders refuse to change, maybe because of fear of the change, what can we do to convince the leaders to accept it? And Alan, the fear of change is all about fear of the unknown. And so what you want to do as much as possible is tackle that unknown with obvious either facts, or work a project plan in, to show how to make the change effective, how to do the change, and minimize the downside on things. The big concern from executives and organizations is risk. And so change involves risk. And so what you want to do is you want to tackle that risk as much as possible. How can you do it cheaply? How can you do it easily? And how can you minimize the downside as much as possible? And so, it can be, you're coming out with a new product, for instance. But that new product, if you produce 10,000 of these things, can be broken down and used for spare parts on the existing product. That's reducing the downside of it. And so you want to look at that downside, but come up with that clear project plan to take them from where you are at right now to where you think they need to be. But tackle that fear of the unknown as much as possible. Jackie asks, what are great team building exercises? Jackie, I actually am going to defer this question a little bit to Google. Simply type in team building exercises and you will come up with a laundry list of different ones that will match your organization. The thing about it is making recommendations on team building exercises, I don't necessarily know what you're looking for out of the team building exercises. What I do recommend for people is that they do them regularly. What you will find when you do this search is there are a ton of team building exercises that don't take more than 5 minutes to do. If you have daily stand-up meetings where everybody comes around a table or something like that, you can throw that into an agenda. You can do that on a bi-weekly meeting, on monthly team meetings, that sort of thing, where you can just throw in a quick 5-minute, 10-minute team building exercises. It doesn't mean that you guys are going away for the weekend on doing ropes courses and camping in the woods as far as team building exercises. They can be very simple, and I am a huge fan of them, but you need to see which is going to work for your particular organization. On there. So direct you to Google and see what you get on there, but definitely definitely try to do them on a weekly basis is really what you want to go for. You want to do them regularly. Team building exercises are not one and done sort of things. You need to have a plan for carrying them on all the way through the life cycle of the team. Negnaland asked the question, what do you think about continuous asking for a promotion? Meanwhile, it will not happen, at least in the near future. You want to let your boss know, this goes for everybody that's out there, you want to let your boss know that you want to advance in the organization, if you want to advance in the organization. And you can ask them what it is that they think that you should work on, what they think you should be exposed to, that sort of thing. Usually what the boss will say is, well, you just need to keep doing a great job, you know. But what you want to do is you want to remind them of that at different intervals. So usually you'll bring that up and they'll kind of defer the details of it. And then maybe a month later, you can reference the conversation and say, hey, I know I mentioned promotion and different duties to kind of prepare myself for it. Is there anything else that popped up on your radar that I could help with that would give me some experience moving forward? And you have that conversation then maybe every quarter after that. That way you're being front of mind. You're also persistently tackling that. After you ask them the third or fourth time if they would give you some duties to give you some experience, they will start giving you some things to do, because then at that point they know you're serious. At that point they know you're going to come back and ask them anyways, and there's usually something on their plate that they wouldn't mind getting off of their plate. So I don't want you to do it continuously, but I want you to do it at regular intervals. So have that initial conversation, do so a month later, and then basically every 3 months after that, ask them if there's anything else that would help you gain experience for the next position up there, and that'll keep you front of mind for them. That's how I look to tackle it. And that makes it productive. Even if they said something like, we're not going to have a promotion for you for the next 2 years, you are asking not for the promotion, you are asking for experience that will help you get that promotion. And so that keeps it constructive as well. Tej asked a question, what's the best way to break up a clicky culture at work? Team building exercises are actually a good way to do that, because it exposes people to different areas of other people's personalities. You can take the direct route. I've done it in the past, and then I've not done it as well, where I have regularly switched up seating charts. So every 6 months, we'd come out with a new shift bid, and we would change where everybody was sitting. And that would expose them to different people. But team building exercises are a great way to do that. You can structure those so that you mix up who's mixed up with who. But that's kind of the way to tackle that, is through communication. I don't have a problem with cliques. I don't have a problem with people having a group of friends that they want to be involved with, as long as it remains positive. And in the cases where it isn't positive, Tej, what you want to do is you want to pull those individuals in when they are being negative in that clicky culture and say, this is not what we're about. We are all here focused on the same goal of great customer service, maximum productivity, maximum profitability, that sort of thing. And this sort of behavior isn't something that is going to help with that. And so then you can mediate that discussion at that point. But work on communication and creating those opportunities for people who don't regularly talk to one another to talk to one another. And you'll find that the cliques expand, contract, change, and just kind of naturally morph throughout the course of the quarter, the year, as people get exposed to different people. Maria asked the question, should I inform my new staff, which I'm meeting in a few days, of things I will not tolerate, such as chronic lateness, frequent absences, negative attitudes? It's a great thing for new leaders to come in to set those expectations. What I do recommend, Maria, is that you don't set those expectations before you've had an opportunity to listen and observe the team. All right, you want to make sure that you are listening first, that you are observing first, so that you know exactly what you should be applying and how to apply those expectations. Nobody particularly likes a boss who comes in, who doesn't know the operation, who comes in and makes a whole bunch of expectations. Now, of course, those are basic ones that you've listed here, but still, everybody is a little bit averse to that. So you definitely want to get clear on expectations, but make sure you've had that time ahead of time. And then, Maria, what you want to do is you want to phrase those expectations in as positive a light as possible by giving the reasons behind it. So you can tell your staff, there's a few expectations that I have, just basic things that help the organization run and are respectful in a team environment. And that is, being late is not something that is acceptable. It is not you being a good team member. If you're, playing football and one of the team members isn't out on the pitch or out on the field, well, they're not helping the team out. So you need them to be there at the time that they need to be there. So explain the why behind those expectations. And start out, like I say, a little bit more positive, a little bit more benefit of the doubt. That way they feel more comfortable coming to you with things. And make sure that when you say those expectations that you give them a chance to have some feedback on it. Does anybody have an issue with this that we need to discuss about lateness? Or if you have an individual issue, please come to me afterwards. You want to create that openness and that buy-in to your expectations so that you don't run into that down the road. What you don't want to have happen is, somebody not meet expectations, you call them out on it, and then you find out when you're calling them out that they have a perfectly valid reason for it that you would totally accept, but you didn't know about it ahead of time. That's just created a negative interaction. So have that listening time, have that observation time before as a new manager you set those expectations. Then set those expectations with the why, and then open it up for discussion after you've explained those expectations, and be open to having those individual conversations with people as well. And you'll find those expectations are both met better, and there's more of a positive vibe than just the new boss coming in and setting up a whole bunch of edicts for everybody. Charlene, sorry I missed you on this one as well, but we will catch you next time. How do you deal? Renee asked a question. How do you deal with snarky, gossiping coworkers of management level? I separate myself from gossip whenever possible. So the first thing is if you're not in a position, if you're not in a position to call them out on it, what you want to make sure is that you separate yourself from that. What you absolutely don't want to be associated with is the rumor mill. That is the death of many careers and much trust in organizations, is people who aren't contributing to the rumor mill, but are a part of the rumor mill. And so you don't want to be associated with it. So you might want to disassociate with those individuals where appropriate. Now, as far as tackling gossip, where you might have some level of authority over people, what I often mention is calling that person in who's spreading the gossip and saying, hey, that's not really something that's helping everybody out. That's spreading negativity. That's undermining teamwork. That's not what we're about here. And what happens is a lot of time, the reason that gossip takes place is people are too chicken to call it out in front of the particular person. And so when anybody calls them out, that all of a sudden makes them a little bit more accountable for their behavior, and there will be a natural inclination for them to not gossip as much in the future. That's often the way I tackle gossip amongst employees, is actually starting to call it out to them, and you'll see it naturally dissipate. Next question is, how do I ensure, Vinette asked the question, how do I ensure my team takes full accountability for their production efforts so to lead to sustainable performance? And Vinette, you need to set the expectation of what production effort you're looking for. Get crystal clear. If you were to ask your 10 employees, let's say you have 10, what it is that their production effort should be, you would be surprised at all of the variances that are out there if you haven't had this discussion ahead of time. So get clear on what it is that you're looking for, but then also talk to the employees about how it is that you can both get there. All right. Setting expectations is great, but you need to have the buy-in and the ownership from the team members to actually achieve those expectations. Yes, lots of times you can go ahead and just kind of be a bull in a china shop and kind of force them through it. And sometimes you have to lead the way on it. But by and large, you can come up with a plan that everybody goes, oh, that makes sense. If I do A and I do B and I do C, then I'm going to get D. So work with them on plans. You'd be surprised also when you have those discussions of the good ideas that are out there that you hadn't thought of. And so you can then bring those to light for everybody so the production increases exactly how you expect it to. But get clear on those expectations, crystal clear, and then work a plan with everybody. So if they do this, sales, for example, just simply offering a cross-sell to somebody of another product leads to 5% more cross-sells. 1 in 20 people will take you up on what your recommendation is. Those sorts of things where if we do this, then we're going to achieve it. That's what I would really focus on, Vinette. Next question comes from Natalie, and that's, how can I help someone with low confidence when dealing with the public? What I would first do is, Natalie, is I would give them a little bit of exposure with smaller groups, or more familiar settings with them. So start small is what I recommend for those introverts. I actually posted something today in regards to being an introverted leader, and one of the recommendations was to start small. So you start small with team members. So maybe you have them lead the team meeting with employees that they know already. Give them some exposure with public speaking. Give them some exposure. Give them a checklist of things that they need to cover when they're dealing with the public. Preparation is another key to that. So you give them practice in a setting that they're familiar with. Again, I go back to, say, retail. Maybe they love, Garmin GPS units. So make sure that you put them in a position where they are dealing with something that they are comfortable with. Give them that preparation, those checklists, and then give them the positive feedback when they do well. That is one of the main things that you want to do on that. So prepare them for it, give them the practice with it so that they see that, and then recognize the fruits of their labor when they do a good job. And that will create that sort of circle that moves them up to being great in a public setting. But that's how I'd handle that. Sammy asked the question, how can I address time management? And I bet there's a bunch of people on here that are thrilled that somebody asked that. Time management is all about priorities and focus. We will not, in today's day and age, ever get everything off of our to-do list. As soon as we get a bunch of things off of our to-do list in organizations, it will fill back up again with things that we'd like to have that, but we know you're working on other things. So you're never going to get everything done, but what you can do is you can get the most important things done. So you need to prioritize what's on your list. All right? And it can be simple as starting out with 3 things that you want to get done today that are going to get done regardless of anything else that's going on. So get clear on your priorities. The second thing is to focus. All right? We are bombarded with all kinds of, in leadership, questions and pulls on our time. Somebody pops into our office and they need something answered right away. You need to focus. And so part of time management is using those priorities and asking yourself whether what you are dealing with in front of you is a higher priority than what you want to be dealing with at the time. The example I use all the time is this a question that would have waited until I got back from lunch? Is this a question that would have waited until I got done with the meeting that I was in? So many urgent and emergency situations aren't urgent and emergency enough to bother you while you're at lunch, to bother you while you're in a meeting. In those cases, they can wait 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes while you finish whatever is a higher priority. All right, so priorities and focus. Those are 2 things to work on. Now, I'll give you one of my big hints, big tips as far as time management is concerned, and that is make the first 30 minutes of your day sacred. Whatever that highest priority item is that you determine you need to work on, spend the first 30 minutes of your day working on it. You may not complete it, but you will at least get some progress done. Too often, what we do is we say, okay, I want to get this taken care of today. Well, that's great, except that we walk in the door and the first thing we do is we open up email and we look at what everybody else wants to do. Or we ask the team what's going on and what you can help with. Well, now you've just made your priority, your highest priority, subservient to everybody else. So stop it. Again, 30 minutes. If it is really an emergency, they will break up, that 30 minutes of time. They will interrupt your lunch. They will interrupt you in a meeting. All right? So that 30 minutes is sacred, and that will be a big help to you getting some of those larger items off of your plate. But that's my advice on time management. I appreciate it. Sierra asked the question, what tips do you have for recruiting top talent? Talented people already have jobs, so how do I encourage them to entertain the idea of taking on a position with my team? And Sierra, you kind of hit the nail right on the head. A lot of people don't realize that you are in a competition, not for just the customer, but you are in a competition in your organization for talent. You need to market those positions that you have out there, those job duties that you have out there. Who cares what the job duties are? People want to know what the impact is. So you need to not just write a job description, you need to write an impact description. You need to let people know where the next steps are in the organization. You need to empower the team that you have currently so that you have an understanding of what you're offering people. But you are very much in competition for talent. So when you post jobs up, you need to make them interesting. Good people are also looking for challenges, and if they don't have those challenges in their current job, that's when they start looking elsewhere. And so when you have those jobs, you need to make sure that they are as attractive as possible. You don't want to fluff them up, but let them know what it's really about and really market it as much as possible. Yeah, they have jobs, but plenty of people that are hired have to give 2 weeks notice on their current position because they're dissatisfied. So there's a pool of people out there that you can get to. You just need to write things up the right way. Now, one issue that comes up is when you post those things up, when you get on job boards and deal with job boards, you get a flood of resumes. You also want to write your job description so that it's challenging and it has accountability built in. That helps you from dealing with the wrong type of applicants so that you can have more time to deal with the right type of applicants. And what I mean by that is you need to put in what is your expectations for the position. Okay, well, we're going to increase sales 15%. We're going to do this. How are we going to do that? Well, the expectation on your job description that you post up out there is, expectation is to not cross-sell customers. It is to cross-sell with a successful rate of 7.5%. Initiate sales increases of 5% a quarter. Come up with hard and fast, accountable metrics. You should have those for your team already as far as what you're holding them accountable to, but put those out there as well, and then you're going to get the right kind of applicants, because what other people will see on that, what successful people will see on that is, I'm not going to be the best person in this position. I'm going to be part of a team of high performers, because if everybody's held to this standard, then great, that's fantastic. Other thing is, getting back to kind of the main point of your question, is recruiting top talent, is put those feelers out there. You should always be recruiting. Even if you don't have a position open at this time, you should be talking to your peers about their staff and where their staff wants to go and whether there's candidates for your position. When you're talking to your friends, are there people that are a part of their organizations who they respect? Because you can poach that talent. So you have a friend that's in a completely different industry, but they have a leader that's absolutely amazing. Well, that might be somebody that you want to reach out to and say, hey, would you be interested in this sort of position? And so you've already got that great job description, that impact description for the position. And so you can go out there and market those people. But I do recommend talking to your friends about people, when you're in a leadership position, talk to your friends about people that they think would be great in your position or people that they respect. And then you can reach out to those particular individuals and see if you can set up a meeting and get them on board. That's a great question, Sierra. I'm actually going to sign off right now. We kind of ran out of time. I will drop down into the comment section and tackle the questions that I didn't get to. I know there was a ton of questions that I did not get to. So I'll tackle those in the comment section over the course of the rest of the day. I've got some live sessions next week, Tuesday and Thursday. Check them out on my Facebook page. Subscribe. It'll just drop a little reminder in that they're there. And I really appreciate everybody's comments, everybody's questions. Love talking to you guys, and have a great weekend. Bye-bye.